And then he knew the law, he knew they were wrong, he's telling me just wait, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. I put all my trust in him and I'm glad I did. So now I got to wait almost another year. And I'm innocent, you know, like if you're in jail, what are you in for, huh? Nothing.
Just waiting.
Nothing. Just putting in my time. So now, this is the way things work too, and you've heard about this. You got to know somebody that knows somebody and everything. He runs into an old judge, a woman that he knew from a long time ago, and he starts telling her my story. She says, "It's outrageous. He's in preventative prison for 2 years. He can't be in there for more than a year." He says, "Well, could you get us a date?" And she goes, "Next week."
Wow, that's
This
awesome.
is a top judge. Now we're talking judges, not magistrates, not puppets, nothing like that. And in the meantime, you know, I'd been transferred to the 65 and over, 60 and over prison. Things were a lot better, but you really just lived day by day thinking nothing was ever going to happen. And they called me up one day and said, "You're going to court on Monday." And we went in on Monday. And now my lawyers had all this ammunition, all these accusations, and they went after these people. And they went after the guy who was supposedly the investigator, the guy that didn't want to be there. And they said to him, "Okay, you stated that he went into Zona 2, because Zona 2 was under investigation, and you stated that Zona 2 had 5 different girls that testified that Zona 2 is pimping them. Can we see the names of the girls? Can we see the statements?" No, I don't have any of that. Of course you don't have it, because it never happened.
No implication.
And then statement after that, and this Diego's assistant was quite a guy. He got right in his face, and at the end, he gets right in this guy's face and he says, "You think Dave had anything to do with human trafficking?" He said, "You think he had anything to do with pimping?" "No, not at all." "Do you think he was promoting prostitution?" "No." And then he got real close to him and he goes, "You think he committed any crime at all?" And this guy goes, "None whatsoever." Now, these prosecutors, they were right out of the movies, you know.
Gotcha.
And I swear this girl was an offspring of Adolf Hitler. She sat there and waved her arms around and screamed and everything. And their case was, the reason I didn't do anything wrong, I never mentioned prostitution, I never mentioned money or anything, it was because I knew the rules. Really? That's the judge, everybody went, "Well, what's your case?" So this is so cut and dry. And now they tell you to go back to the prison. They drive you back in the back of these dog trucks and everything. And just come back at 9 o'clock in the morning for the verdict.
Right.
I didn't sleep too well that night. You go back in the morning.
I can imagine.
And I'm thinking what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to get me deported, get me a guilty plea, time served, deport you, case over. That's what I'm hoping for, right? But all the immigration officers, all the jailhouse guys, everybody were all on my side. They were the ones that walked me up. I made 19 trips to court. So these guys were all in the room just like this. And then she got up, and the first thing she said, I got an interpreter telling me everything, and he was really a good guy, but he's hard to understand. And the first thing she says is, "Today, we're going to absolve this case," which means it's going to be over with. And I'm like, "That's good." As she went on, she talked for 45 minutes about what a terrible situation this was, how this should have never happened, there was no evidence, blah, blah, blah. And this guy just banging in my ear like this, and I'm thinking, this is sounding pretty good. And finally, at the end, he's just quivering. He says to me, "Congratulations, David, you're a free man." And then you just break down. You can't believe not only that it's over with, but you're completely free. So the judge then writes a thing out and says, completely innocent, any charges whatsoever, and is more than welcome to come back and visit Costa Rica anytime he wants.
I know you were there for a couple of days even after you were
Well,
released,
this is the thing, is that we're very skeptical of these people because they are organized criminal associations. So, like I always said, the real criminals are on the other side of the bench. And I heard all these stories while I was locked up about you walk out the door and, "Oh, we found this girl that said you raped her 5 years ago," or something like that. And you never know when that's going to happen, because this was mud in their eye. This was really a bad deal for them. So the U.S. Embassy says to me, and they were nice guys. They'd bring you books or something like that, but they never wanted to get involved in your case. And they said to me, "Now look, this is before I went in. They said, before I went to the trial, if they find you innocent, get the hell out of the country. Don't take a bus. Don't take an airplane. Get to the border." I go, "Why?" "Oh, you never know what these guys are going to do." And this is what I'm getting from the American Embassy. So you do certain things now. So I got out. I walked around San Jose. I went to the Sportsman. Thanked Bill for all his help. I went down and talked to all of the people I knew. And the classic of this whole thing was, you got to remember, I never looked in a mirror. I didn't have any. I looked in a mirror for 2 years. Never seen a TV for 2 years. Never seen a newspaper for 2 years. And when my lawyer brought me back to San Jose, he says, "You're going to come and meet me Monday morning. Where do you want to stay?" I says, "Put me at the Morrison." So he puts me at the Morrison. And first thing I did, when I looked in the mirror, I thought, wow, I'd lost 40 pounds. I looked like I come right out of a concentration camp. It was so bad. So then I went downstairs, and the next thing I did is I got on a computer. And I sat there for hours reading some of the stories that these people wrote. Just made up stories, and just trying to, see, I was the bad guy. I was the guy, I was the villain, I was the monster, and they were going to make you into this. But now this kind of killed their story.
Yeah,
They had a real amateur that worked for Tico Times, some young guy. And I let him come to the prison and talk to you and everything. You wonder why baseball players and stuff, a lot of people don't want to talk to these reporters? Well, this guy pretends like he's your friend, then he writes in there all of these things you did.
The opposite.
And he took some very, see, when you go to jail, you go to the jail the night before you go to trial. You don't come in a suit or anything. You come in looking like a homeless guy. And your clothes are all dirty, everything. And he took some very unattractive, let's say, photos of me and puts it on there and says that I've been sentenced to 5 years, which wasn't true or anything. So everybody starts to see this stuff. And you've got it in your mind. Your first impression, it's just like when you see these things on Facebook and you see some woman all beat up and then a picture of the guy and it says, "This guy did this to me." What do you think of that guy? You want to kill him, right?
Right.
But maybe that didn't happen. Maybe that really didn't happen, and she's just making that story up. But that vision sticks with you. That's what happened.
It fit the narrative, basically.
Everybody looks at the narrative. Everybody looks at that, and nobody's ever going to say, "Hey, guess what? None of that really happened." So 37 different newspapers from Australia all the way around covered this. And I'm just reading all this stuff. So the next morning, I said, I gotta go take a walk. And I walk out of the Morrison in the morning. I'm going down the street, the guy selling newspapers on the corner here, and the front page is a picture of me leaving the prison, holding up my release papers and everything else. It was awesome. And it was all in Spanish, saying, the gringo found innocent, all that stuff.
Right.
And then, but, you knew so many people, they're all come. My cab driver that I had for 5 years, he drives by honking the horn, holding up the deal. So you're starting to feel like things are going your way.
Right.
And there were guys coming up to me, giving me money, asking me if I needed anything. Okay, you want to borrow a phone? No, just keep the phone. This is the way they work. Because you got to remember, I was in there for 2 years. The only person that ever came to visit me was Dennis Eaton, the guy who owned the Freebird. Greatest guy you ever met in your whole life, by the way. He was dying of cancer. And he, to his dying day, was supporting me. Well, I want to go see you, Dave, but I don't want to be connected. See, that was the whole thing. A lot of people are like, well, you're one of his friends. It's almost like the 5 years for me knowing the guy from Monger Network. See, that's how bad it was. And so anyway, everybody's distanced themselves. Now they're all, and really, they came out of the woodwork. Congratulations, nice on it. Except, I go back to Key West now, and you got to remember, I played ball with and scuba diving and everything with some of these guys for 30 years. Their wives read all of this stuff.
Oh, wow. I can just imagine.
You went to Cuba with Dave. You went to Costa Rica with Dave. All of a sudden, Jeffrey Dahmers would have had a better chance of getting a dinner invitation than me. I was blackballed from their families, blackballed from everything. And the husbands didn't want to be,
associated with
you could choose you or the family. And then I had several meet me privately and said, "Look, Dave, I'm really sorry about all this and everything." But you really find out who your friends are when something like that happens. And there was nothing you could do about it, because the papers will write everything, but they'll never write the ending.
Hey, I have a question, because you was talking about like you could sue for every day that you were in jail. Do you ever think about pursuing that, or what's your thoughts on doing that?
And that's this is where another one of the narratives comes in. There's these people that don't know nothing. There's a lot of these YouTubers and bloggers out there that get bits and pieces. So they didn't come like you and talk to me. They just made stuff up. Like Cuba Dave is on the run now, everything. He's a very prominent guy. I'm not going to mention his name because he's such a good guy. And he interviews a lot of celebrities. And he knew me from Sosua, and he was interviewing me right when I got out. That's Dave. Going to Medellin? why wouldn't you just like go to Kansas or someplace and change your name? Because I'm not guilty of anything. See, this is what they couldn't get in their mind was I was completely innocent of everything.
Railroaded, man. That's
and so I said, no, I'm not. And then I told them, I talked about a lot of things I did. I had a lot of stories, everything. I was a single guy having a lot of fun. There's a lot of people thought I was the greatest guy there was. There's a lot of people that were jealous. And there was a lot of people, I remember in Sasua, they thought, oh God, Cuba Dave's here. Next thing you know, they'll put a Walmart in here. See, there's people that this was their territory. So you develop enemies. But I was getting 20,000 views a month back then.
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't like it is now. But I was talking about the bars, the restaurants, every guy that had a flower shop, anything. It wasn't what you think. And I was coached pretty well by these guys that you can't talk about. I was stuff I put on there, and they go, no, we can't.
Don't put that on.
Yeah, we get, So here was the deal. I've got just about $2.5 million coming, and I leave. I stayed 8 days. What do you think it's going to be like when you go to that Miami airport? You go there for a week and wonder, what were you in Costa Rica for? What was your, I went to Dot, went to Dennis. Yeah, go ahead. I get there after 2 years on my passport being blank. Never looked up at me. Go. Just like that. It was like they knew, everybody knew. And I'll tell you how big this case was. A family member of mine went to a state senator, happens to be a Democrat, in Minnesota, a senator, and said, I'm going to tell you a story about my brother right now, and I think that they're really violating his rights. And he says, his name is David Strecker. And she says, we've been told not to touch that.
Wow.
She never called back, nothing like, I'll call you back, so she's right away. She knew exactly about it, so we've been told not to touch that. So this was one of these things where this thing, the Clinton Foundation was involved in, not only fell apart, looked very criminal at the time, and they're not going to jump in there and save my ass because this is just tough luck. All it was tough luck. And that's, this is going back to this Brittany Griner thing. When I read all these stories about her in this Russian prison, she was there for 5 months. I'm like, hold my beer, 5 months. And she was guilty. She pled guilty. I never pled guilty to nothing. But I spent 2 years, times 2 is 4 years. And so the most they could have given me on that last one would have been 4 years, so I'd already served the entire sentence by the time. And what I was trying to do when I went to that final trial was he was trying to get me out on a conditional release where I could stay at his mother's house, ankle bracelet, all that stuff. All of this stuff had been denied. I was offered $40,000 bail one time. No, can't give him bail. Can't give him bail because he'll run out of the country.
I remember that too.
I'm going to run out of the country. Listen, I'm facing possible 4 years, which I've already spent half of it. And then I'm going to cross an illegal. Just the whole thing was so prosperous to even think about. So I'm thinking they're not going to let me out on this thing, and that's what he was hoping for. I was going to get out on then you go sign in every 15 days, and eventually they forget about it and you go home. No, he just says no. You're innocent. There's no case here at all. But this Diego, who was my attorney, couldn't find a better friend either. I mean, what a great guy. He did a lot of this for nothing, and he just stepped forward. He knew what the difference between right and wrong. He handled murder cases, everything. This wasn't a murder case. This wasn't even his. He didn't know anything about the Del Rey places. Like, he didn't even know the background of the case. He just knew that this was wrong.
It was wrong. Yeah. Wow.
So the deal with the money, he's seen it just like everybody else did. So that night when we're going out to eat after I've been free, he says, you got to sign this contract, and it's like a 60-40 deal. And we're suing them, and you're probably going to get a couple $1 million out of this. I'm thinking that's fine, but you're dealing with Costa Rica. You don't take anything for granted. So now, I did go home. I went through the stuff at immigration, had no problems. I get home, and I was home a couple of months, and everything's normal. All of a sudden, I get a letter in the mail saying, they're going to retry the case. They're going to retry the case. I've already tried it 4 times. And he goes, well...
They know that then they're going to retry it.
Now they're going to retry it again. I goes, how can they retry it? When this guy stood up there under oath and said there was nothing, he was involved in nothing, well, and he's can't say much, but it really comes down to then they don't have to pay. So I says, what do I have to do? Well, you got to get on a plane, and you got to come down here. I goes, when? He goes, next week. Well, I've got an apartment here. I've got everything. What if I go there and they're going to put me in for 2 more years or something?